Today we're reviewing the Liv Lurra 1 Hardtail. This is the Liv Lurra 1, their latest hardtail. Liv is a women's brand, but don't let that limit you. You can be a man and ride these. Make sure you check out my first look video of this, where I go through geometry and specs. The geometry did not match the geo chart very well. Head angle's a full 1.6 degrees slacker than stated. All right, here we go. I like the spec of the wheel and tire for the price. Really nice tires. Got a little bit of a rattle going on. Kind of a noisy frame. I don't know if it's the internal cable routing. Really tough to pop up into a manual. These grips are massive. They feel like the wolf tooth. Can't remember what they're called. Fatty grips or something. They're massive grips. I think people with small fingers are going to struggle. I'd be curious if women have longer fingers than men. I know my wife does. We'll see if she likes them. Stay tuned for her channel, Dusty Betty, to see her thoughts on this bike. She'll be reviewing it too. Seat angle is steep. A little bit steeper than even I like. I'd probably slide the seat back a centimeter. I got it right in the middle of the rails right now. Especially for a longer chain stay, I don't feel like I need a super steep seat angle. Pretty easy to ride. I'm not fighting the bike. It's interesting with that 64.9 head angle. It's not exactly zippy through these corners. And we have a lot of tire on here. This is an enduro / downhill tire setup, Aggressor and DHF, which will give a lot of people good confidence on their trails. Probably better for newer riders to have more grip than a faster rolling speed and less grip. So I applaud that decision. And these grips are big diameter. You definitely notice it now. Kind of sad it didn't come with lock-on grips, especially for the price. This bike retails at $18.50. So I got a little climb here, and it's slack enough that it feels like I'm climbing an enduro bike, not a zippy trail bike. Front end wanders a bit, which is an interesting combination with the long stem and shorter reach. Just kind of a slow steering feel. I'm excited to try this Crest SL fork. Giant makes their own forks. Not many people can do that and compete with RockShox and Fox. And this fork is extremely overdamped. I wonder if my fork has an issue, or if this is how they all feel. The good thing about Livs is they're available through dealers, and so if your fork does feel overdamped or like it's full of peanut butter instead of lightweight oil, take it to your dealer and have them check it out, and if it needs to get warranty, they can warranty it. Whereas if you buy consumer direct like Canyon or Commensal or YT, someone like that, you don't have a dealer to take it to, and you're handling all of that yourself. Oh, I'm gonna retry that. Try this again. Oh. Man, just kind of bounced off that with the fork, but I got it. The geometry of this bike and the weight balance and where your body is between the front and back wheels is pretty consistent with Liv's other bikes I've ridden, which puts you ahead of where a lot of other bikes do. So that means the rear end feels a little bit further behind you, a little harder to get into wheelies and manuals. But I think this design is going to suit people with less upper body strength. Normally, I'd go up those 2-foot ledges, but this geometry fights me a little on that. So this bike's a little happier, kind of staying on the ground, letting the bike ride itself, than me try to muscle it up over bonus obstacles. And that's usually what happens for me with longer chain stays and shorter reach. This bike feels light. It motors along real well. Hello.
Hello. Good luck.
Thank you.
You are much closer than me.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. So yeah, this bike feels light. It's pretty zippy. When pedaling, there's no drag. The frame's stiff enough that when you put power down, it goes forward. And despite these being like aggressive tires, they're rolling pretty well under this thing. All right, let's get a little chunky down. See what this fork feels like. I haven't been impressed so far. Okay, that's all right. These brakes are adequate. I don't like the long lever on these inexpensive Shimanos. So my job is to review bikes, not just tell you everything's great. My job is to tell you what's good and what could use a little help. Now I need to slow down my rebound. It's definitely topping out where it extends and gets a clunk. It definitely is over damped. Feels like the lockout's halfway on, but it's totally open. Still getting that top out feel where when I manual off of things, I get a top out clunk. Okay, so the geometry was fine down that. Comfortable riding position, like you don't have to do anything crazy. If you just turn off your brain and pedal, it does well. I think this will really appeal to new riders. If you like trialsy stuff and advanced moves, you're gonna fight it a little bit, but it'll do it, just takes more effort. Yeah, I'm not impressed with that fork. It is very not sensitive. And I'm running 10 PSI lower than it recommends. Still not getting full travel. So the fork's letting me down a little bit. It's not as good as like a Bomber Z2 or a Fox Rhythm 34. I was hoping it'd feel like a Rhythm 34. Something about that damper is just super over damped, meaning it's slow to push down on that fork. It just feels like the lockout's halfway on, even when it's wide open. Not sure if I had a problem or if they all feel like that. A little bit of a disappointment. It works, it's not terrible, but I was hoping for better for an $1,850 bike. Tires are great, wheels feel great. I'm fine with the SX cranks. I like that it came with an NX shifter. The brakes are fine. Whenever we've got these long levers, I don't know why Shimano did this. It encourages people to brake with 2 fingers, which Shimanos are touchy enough, you don't need that. And so to get that in the right position, you need to move the lever like 1.5 inches to the left and swap places with the shifter, because these levers are super long. Well, since these aren't lock-on grips, that means you're sliding them off with an air compressor, swapping those two, then sliding them back on with an air compressor. Not super user serviceable, not the end of the world, and this isn't the only bike to do that, but it's worth mentioning on these. But if this were my bike, I'd swap those around and take the time and get that dialed. Dropper feels good. It's a little short. I wish I had another 20 mil of dropper, but it's passable. Frame's a little bit on the stiff side, but I wasn't expecting like anything just to blow my mind at this price point. You really do feel like you're in the middle of the bike when you ride this. That means you don't need to get forward to weight the front. You're gonna have lots of cornering traction, even though it's a slack head angle. It's almost like driving an automatic versus a stick shift. I think stick shifts are more fun, but they're not as user friendly, and they're not more fun for everybody. A lot of people prefer automatics. This feels a little bit more like an automatic. You can kind of turn your brain off a little more, enjoy the scenery, and let the bike do its thing. I like bikes where I'm in control and I can make it do things at a whim based on what I come upon on the trail. And this bike doesn't quite have that. So it leans more towards the comfort kind of automatic riding experience. It sure is a beautiful bike. I think it's stunning and I would happily ride this. Personally, I don't care if I'm on a women's branded bike or not. I'd ride a Juliana all day long or a Liv, as long as the geometry suited me and what I like. There's nothing wrong with this bike, and it's a solid build, and it's got great components that are easy to work on. Like if one of my NICA students showed up with this to a practice, I'd be thrilled. It's a solid bike. It's got boost through axles front and rear. It's got tapered headset. It's got nice disc brakes. Like it's a good package. It's got a dropper. It'd be a great bike for the first 3 to 5 years of someone's riding career. For how I ride, the geometry is not where I would want it. I would find another bike for this price range for what I like. But for a lot of people who want that autopilot feel, I think it's got a lot going for it for the price. I think this bike would appeal to more people with a little bit steeper head angle. So what would I do if my daughter brought one of these home? I'd buy a Works Components angle set plus 1 angle set to bring this up to 66 degrees. Give her a tiny bit more reach. I think that'd be a great trail bike for her. That's how I would run this if it were my bike. Now it's confident here, and it rewards a modern riding style. And it's nice how that longer chainstay does put more weight on the front, so you're less likely to wash out. This bike's fun to descend on. Once you get up to 15 miles an hour or faster, it corners quite well. Because the reach is shorter, you can still manual it if you have to. Interesting. Hello. We'll wait for a good spot that's good for you. I'm in no rush. Thank you. It's just me. Have a great day. So like on downhill flow or when you get some speed, I like this thing. 2-foot drop there, not bad. Right through the middle. Thank you. Oh boy. Yeah, but you guys, I'll wait till you're in the wash. It'll be easier to pass there. Thank you. You guys okay if I sneak on by? Thanks. You guys a local hiking group?
Not local, but
Oh, cool.
the guy in the red local.
Oh, great. Have fun. Hello. Oh, you're fine. I won't run over you. Thank you. I'm the only one.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Just you?
Just me. Have a good hike. Big group. Trails are busy in Sedona right now. Glad people are out enjoying nature. I think this bike's going to be great for people who don't want to be thinking about body position and just want to pedal and go. Solid feeling bike. Nothing feels cheap. I mean, the fork's lacking. It's not terrible, but it's not a lot of bump sensitivity. You know what? I'm having fun on it though. I feel like it's my job to be pretty critical of the bikes I ride instead of just tell you that they're all awesome. They are all awesome, but when the geometry clicks with how you like to ride, man, what a difference that makes. I wish the dropper got out of my way a little more. It's great that it comes with a dropper, but it should have been a 150 in my mind. But the dropper feels good. Like, it just feels like a solid bike. Aside from that fork, now that fork is stiff and harsh. I think light riders are especially gonna hate it. I wonder how my wife's gonna make this fork work for her. It pedals quite well. Kind of a zippy bike. I think it's a good all-rounder. You know, this thing's pretty versatile. You could take it on most trails. I'd avoid the double black diamonds, but that's smart advice for a hardtail anyway. But I think this bike's gonna get a lot of people into the sport and help them have a good riding experience with a quality product. It's easy for me to ride because I'm used to slack bikes, but I do think it'd be easier ride for newer riders if it was a 66 head angle, not a 64.9 or whatever it was on the measurement that I measured. You do need a little bit better riding technique to make it corner well. It's got some cool properties though. Kind of shortish wheelbase, kind of shortish reach. Good little bike though. It's far better than the first 10 bikes I owned. Very upgradable. And provided you love the geometry, man, it'd totally be worth putting some nice parts on one of these things. Getting some weird noises out of the fork. Just feels a little loose and clunky in there. Man, I've heard rumors about these fork, and honestly, I put them out of my mind, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna have my own conclusions and ride this thing. People have said they've had issues with them. I talked to the Liv person, and they said, well, during COVID, there were a couple ones that were assembled improperly, but now they're good. But I don't know, I just feel like this fork is letting me down, and for $1,850, I'd expect a better fork. But maybe I got a dud. The next step would be to take this to a dealer, have them inspect it, and make sure everything's working properly, and if not, get it swapped out and warrantied. All right, this thing has some stiff competition at $1,850. There are a lot of other bikes in that price range. It's not quite inexpensive enough to like let a lot of like the downfall of the fork. It's not inexpensive enough to let that go. If this had been around the $1,600, $1,650 price range that they announced when it first came out, we'd be having a different discussion. But at $1,850, you start getting into a lot of great bikes right now that are pretty stiff competition. The Liv, I think, is gonna make a lot of sense for people who maybe don't have a ton of upper body strength, who kind of want a bit of an autopilot ride where they're not having to think about it too much. They're wanting modern standards so that if you wanted a nice wheel set, you could absolutely put them on here. Everything's gonna fit. Where you could build this up to be super light, or you could build it up to be pretty burly. It's an interesting geometry. It reminds me a bit of that Sharon DG that I rode that I love so much. A little bit shorter reach, but the slacker head angle kind of puts the tire out there. So they kind of counterbalance nicely. I would want the chainstay a little shorter for my personal preferences, but there are a lot of places, like if you're in the Midwest riding rolly, flowy trail and you're not interested in manualing between rollers or bunny hopping over logs or things like that, I think this could work really well for you. That said, if you're in the Midwest riding some of that more rolly, flowy stuff, I think I'd put a +1 degree angle set in here to bring it up to about 66 degrees. I think it'd make this bike a little snappier on the flats. I think it'd make it a little more trail oriented and less kind of shreddy. The current Geo isn't quite stable enough to just bomb down stuff like most other 65 degree slack bikes, but it's kind of got this happy medium where it's slack enough that you're not going to be overwhelmed on black diamonds, but it's not so unmanageable that it's not fun on greens. It's a pretty well-rounded bike, and I think that's what you want in this price range and in this demographic. Now, there are other bikes that I think are a slightly better value. And if you want to talk about that and pick my brain on which bike I'd recommend for you in this price range or any price range, I do that over on Patreon. We send messages back and forth over and over, and we kind of hone down what your needs are, and I make about 10 bike recommendations for you, and then we narrow that down together to get the perfect bike for the attitude and style and personality of the ride that you like where you ride. If you're going to spend $1,800 to $2,800 or more, you might want to become a patron and chat with me and make sure you get the right bike for your riding style. I've steered a lot of people away from bikes that they thought they wanted, and it turned out it would have been the wrong bike for them by far. So if you're interested in that, become a patron. That's how I support my family. That's how I put food on the table and pay the electric bill. If that's not in your budget, feel free to keep enjoying these free videos. I think the greatest thing this bike has going for it is that it's available at giant dealers, and there are giant dealers all across the US. Now, if the dealers are smart enough to order these in, that's a big if. A lot of companies don't order hardtails and they just focus on full suspensions. But if your dealer has one of these in stock, you're in luck, because you can go ride it around the parking lot, you can see how it steers, you can see if that geometry works for you or not. And if you buy one and then you have a problem with the fork and it needs to be warrantied or anything else, you've got a dealer there to support you. And so you can check in with them and say, hey, the bike's doing this thing. Does that seem right? Or these grips are a little bit thick for what I need. Can we swap those out for something thinner? That's the beauty of a dealer network, is they can help you with the purchase decision. They can help you test ride them. And the question is, how much money is that worth? I think it's worth a couple $100 to be able to throw a leg over it, to ride it, to get some advice on which size you should ride, to try a couple different sizes back to back. So many people buy bikes sight unseen online and end up getting the wrong size or not loving the bike after the first few rides. And in the end, that costs them a lot more than a couple $100. So when we're just comparing bikes with spec for the price, I don't think it's fair to compare something with a strong dealer network like Liv and Giant to something like Canyon or Commensal that don't have strong customer service and strong warranty. So if warranty doesn't matter to you and you don't need a bike shop and you don't need to throw a leg over it, maybe you threw a leg over your buddies and you know that size works for you and you don't need a dealer, you can save a couple $100 going straight direct to consumer. But if you're about to drop $1,800 on a bike, I recommend throwing a leg over it to make sure it's what you want. So thank goodness Giant has lots of dealers. Let's hope those dealers were smart enough to spec the Liv Lurra. Let's hope those dealers were smart enough to order the Liv Lurra so they're on shop floor so that you can test ride them to see if they're for you. I'd love to hear from you. What's your favorite part about this bike? What would you change? Post down in your comments below. Thanks for watching, everybody. There's a party in the mountains and you're invited.